good evening and welcome. Welcome. My name is Greyson Newman, and you are listening to Bright Now Radio from brightnowcoaching.com, and this is our weekly show. This is where we kick off our shoes, we leave the day behind, and we talk about some interesting topics that are pertinent to the woman that's you, pertinent to the woman that is serious about her life, who wants to move forward. And my mission is to help you do that. My mission is to bring on these shows experts and people that can help you jumpstart your life. Because sometimes we want to do something, but we're not quite sure how to do it. Maybe we lack the information, lack the motivation, or the inspiration. So each week I'll bring you a different expert, and they will share their knowledge in a particular subject. Now, last week we had on the show, we had Jenny Linus-Steele, who was with us sharing all about domestic violence, such a serious topic, domestic violence and emotional abuse. And we had a phenomenal response. We've had a couple of emails come through in the week, really sort of congratulating Jenny on the work that she's doing out there in community. She is actually the UK ambassador for DV UK, and I mention that because that is a really serious topic. So if you missed last week, you should have actually received the email recording in your inbox. So go along to listen to that, share it with anybody that you know that might need that help, and also if you yourself are suffering from that, in the email there are the helplines and details for those organisations that can help you. Now, this week, I am so excited about this week's call. This week we have Dr Adaeze on the line. She's on the line now, just waiting to come on. And Dr Adaeze, she is a doctor, a GP, family physician, and let me tell you a little bit about her. You may have read up about her on the website, but I'll just go through it with you. Now, Dr Adaeze is a family physician. She's passionate. She's a passionate speaker and a promoter of sexual well-being for women, and in particular, Black women. She draws from 16 years' experience at the front line, both as a medical doctor and educator. Dr Adaeze is also the GP clinical lead for sexual health and blood-borne viruses at NHS Grampian. She is the creator of Sexual Wellbeing Network, a blog that addresses sexual health challenges. According to Dr Adaeze, there is a lack of information on contraception that specifically targets the Black woman. This is despite the recent Department of Health abortion statistics from England and Wales, which showed a 49% rate of recurrent abortion in Black, Afro-Caribbean and Black British ladies. This compares to a national rate of 36%. To try and address the problem, Dr Adaeze has just published a new book, Understanding Contraception, a guide for the Black ladies, which aims to address the sexual health inequality that faces women of the Black ethnic minority in the UK and the rest of the world. Her book, Understanding Contraception, became an Amazon bestseller in 3 categories in the week of its release. Dr Adaeze's goal is to empower and equip women with the knowledge that they require to make choices that positively impact their sexual well-being and their overall experience in life. So I'm going to open up the line for Dr Adaeze to come on. She's going to tell us about what she does, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. So if you've got any questions or anything that comes to mind, please write them down so that you remember, and I'll open up the lines towards the end. So, Dr Adaeze, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Hello,
Oh,
Sonia.
welcome. Thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well indeed.
Good, good.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a very important topic that you're working with, and I've read a little bit about your book, and I read some of the comments that on Amazon, and I read the introduction about your book, and it's such an interesting topic. And I'm glad you've actually sort of taken the bull by the horns and addressing it.
Yeah.
And I know your book is directly it's directly written about sexual health in black women, but I know obviously your knowledge and information is for women across the spectrum.
Yeah.
Because the show here, we have listeners from all backgrounds. So tell me your story. How did you? Well, obviously you're a doctor, but what made you go into writing and working specifically around sexual health and contraception?
Thank you very much, Sonia. Thanks. I'm really glad to be on the show. Well, my personal experience played a major role in what I'm doing now. Some years ago, about 7 years ago, my family went through a challenging time. I was doing my training as a GP with really crazy shifts like 12 midnight to 12 a.m., 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., really difficult shifts at the hospital. And my husband was doing a master's program in the university. We had 2 little children, aged 4 and 3. We had no childcare support, so it was really difficult juggling our careers with children and also working, on our relationship. It was at this really difficult time that I suddenly realized I was pregnant,
Hey.
It was a huge shock to me, and I realized that because of all the pressures around me, I hadn't taken the issue of contraception very seriously. So I was suddenly faced with the dilemma of what to do with an unplanned pregnancy at a challenging period in our lives, But the long and short of it was that I eventually had my lovely daughter, and what a joy she's been to us. But that experience made me realize that many women face the dilemma of an unplanned pregnancy, and abortion is often seen as the only way forward at such times,
Yeah.
I mean, the statistics are there for all to see. High abortion and recurrent abortion rates suggest that many women of childbearing age are simply not using contraception as they should. Yeah. So that got me interested in sexual and reproductive health. And having worked both here in the UK and abroad, I came to realize that sexual health issues form the major bulk of what women consult their doctors about. In fact, for many women, the very first time they've ever visited a doctor properly, I don't mean like immunization and stuff like that. I mean proper visit. It was something to do with their period or pregnancy or a discharge or some sort, or they've come in requesting contraception or termination. So those sort of sexual health issues are what brings women to the doctor. So it's a huge part of women that the medical community just cannot ignore. So that's why I did my training, and then as a GP, then acquired further training in sexual and reproductive health because of my interest in women issue.
Right.
So that was what led me into that. And because I love writing as well, I just got into writing about sexual health issues. So that's it.
All right, okay, excellent. A wonderful story, and amazing that you were managing training to be a doctor, those long shifts, being a mother, being a wife, and you juggled that so well, well. So, yeah, we celebrate you for that because, that just shows us as women that we can, achieve what we want to achieve. And yes, you had the unplanned pregnancy, but you worked your way through that. And as you said, your daughter today is a blessing to you and your family.
Yeah.
So in the work that you do at the moment, what would you say are the main issues facing women in this area?
Sexual health issues for women, still a lot of challenges in that area. I mean, maybe not exactly in UK itself, but worldwide, there's still a lot of gender-based discrimination against women.
Mm-hmm.
So in some places, some women and girls are still being forcibly sterilized, for example, because they have HIV.
Right.
Or they're being subjected to virginity testing, whatever that means, and in some places, just being a woman makes it difficult for you to have access to basic health care and contraception. So still a lot of gender-based discrimination against women. Mm-hmm. And in some places, women's health is just not a priority. I was looking at some figures, and it's a fact that around the world, one woman dies every 2 minutes from complications of pregnancy and childbirth,
Wow.
That's more than 350,000 women every year. This is in a world where men are being sent to the moon and back, so it just beats the imagination that women can still die so easily, from childbirth. How could that be,
Yeah.
And also a lot of ignorance, lack of proper education. There's still limited access to education for many women across the globe. Yeah. And lack of education often results in poverty.
Yes. Yes.
So poverty drives many women to the sex industry. For example, of course, that means lots of infections, sexual health problems. Poverty also causes women to remain in relationships where they undergo, a lot of cruelty, but the women feel helpless to do anything about it because they are poor, they don't know where else to go. What can they do about it? So those issues still confront women. And also violence against women. Women are still being raped, beaten, killed, mutilated across the globe. Yeah. And again, you ask the question, how could that be happening in our world today? It beats the imagination.
Yeah. Yes. Hearing those statistics and those stories is quite shocking. The fact that a woman dying every 2 minutes in this day and age, where we're all walking around with smartphones and tablets and
I know.
And the world is our oyster, but yes, we must remember that in places where there is poverty, where there's lack of education, where women don't have a voice, that there are women suffering as we speak.
Yeah,
as we speak, there is somebody in the duration of this show. You're talking a number of women will die in relation to pregnancy and childbirth. That is shocking, and that is probably something that we here in the West really do take for granted. Really do take for granted. And yes, as you said, things like sex trafficking, poverty, these things have a direct impact on women and their sexual health. So what is being done, on the world stage in relation to tackling these numbers?
Well, there are lots of organizations out there doing their best to help in these areas. There's still much work to be done. Yeah. But there are lots of NGOs helping to distribute free contraception, for example, in the developing countries. So some work is being done, but still so much more to do. And sometimes it needs the government to actually, in those areas, to actually stand up and take an active step. Because there's only so much an NGO can do, or a foreign, the foreign help can achieve if the people on ground themselves are putting up obstacles and making things difficult. So there's work being done, but there's still much more to be done.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. That's something maybe off air. You and I can maybe find out which organisations are there doing some of this work, and maybe I can post it in the event page for this on Facebook, and also send it out with the recording in case people want to know more on how they can help with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Sexual health is very important, however, we all know there are some common misconceptions that women have about their sexual health. Bringing it closer to home in the West, we have access to sexual health centers. We have access to information. We're taught. Young girls are taught this at school, but still there are many misconceptions. What would you say are the common ones, and the common ones that then manifest into the common problems that we see?
Well, sexual health is one area where there are heaps of misconceptions. It depends on what aspect of sexual health you want to look at. For example, there are misconceptions about contraception, and I've tried to address some of these misconceptions in my book, Understanding Contraception. I've heard young girls thinking that, I won't get pregnant if a man pulls out of me before he ejaculates, But we do know that some sperm can leak out of a man's penis even before he ejaculates. Yeah. So that's a misconception that is getting some girls into trouble, you see. There are misconceptions about sexually transmitted infections. Some people feel, I don't have an STD because I don't have any symptoms. But this isn't true, because many of the STDs show no symptoms at all until they're at an advanced stage. Or some people feel, I can catch an infection from a toilet seat. That's a misconception. You can't catch chlamydia or things like that from a toilet seat.
Right.
So, yeah, those are misconceptions. I've heard things about condoms, like people say, we always use 2 condoms so that we'll be very safe. But actually, using 2 condoms increases your risk of the condom tearing, because there's more friction, you see. Yeah. So, ideally, you should just use 1 rather than 2. There are misconceptions about position of sex. People say, if the woman is on top, or we're in the shower, or we're standing up, then there won't be risk of pregnancy. But there's no safe position. If you don't want to be pregnant, you need to use contraception. So in all different areas of sexual health, even things like rape, victims of rape feel that they contributed in one way or the other, but rape is never the victim's fault, you see. So that's the misconception. If you say no to sexual intercourse and the person carries on, then he and not you are at fault. It's as straightforward as that. There are misconceptions about domestic violence. People say, this only happens to the poor or the uneducated woman, but actually it can happen to anyone. I met a lady who went to Harvard University, very intelligent, smart lady, but she was a victim of domestic violence. So a lot of misconceptions out there about sexual health. For HIV, I've heard people say, it only happens to gay men. But we know HIV can happen to, anybody can get it, really, whether you're gay or you're straight. And so on.
Right, yes. And there's also, misconceptions around oral sex, anal sex, when it comes to transmitting sexual diseases. I hear of young girls participating in anal sex because they feel it keeps their virginity, but they're not using protection because they feel they can't get pregnant. And therefore, with no protection, they're then opening themselves up to sexual diseases.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's misconceptions there. So do you think, as I mentioned earlier, there is a plethora of information out there. Why are people still having all these misconceptions? Do you think it's they they're not really tapping into the information at hand, or that it's still taboo. So it's, are mothers really talking to the young girls about this? Do the mothers themselves know? Because maybe they had sexual awareness at school, but things have moved on maybe, 20, 30 years, and now that their daughter's sexually active, the information that they're giving them, might be out of date or might be still based upon, their own misconceptions. Why is it that there is still so much of the misconceptions, given that we've got the internet, we've got TV, we've got radio, we've got magazines. Why still is there so many misconceptions out there? Is it that people are just not bothered until they find themselves in a situation where they have to then go to the doctor and get some help? But leading up to that, they're quite blasé about it.
Well, I think it's a combination of several factors, cultural factors, religious factors, and just a general attitude towards sexual matters. There's a lot of hush-hush about it. Nobody wants to be seen to talk about these things. If you're talking about sexual health, people look at you as though something must be wrong with you, of all things to talk about, So, but that creates a barrier, then people can't ask the questions they need to ask, they can't find out, get the information in the form they can digest. So there is information out there, but it's of a general nature, you see. And sometimes you need something specific to the people you're trying to speak to. For example, you mentioned in your introduction, the black ladies have the highest rate of recurrent abortions. So even though there's information about contraception out there, it needs to be targeted, to the group that needs it more, so to speak. And that's why my book was specific for the black ladies to tackle that specific problem, So religious views also make it a bit challenging to get these things across. For example, it's very difficult to speak in the churches about sexual matters, but these things are important. They form a major bulk of our lives, so they do need to be spoken about. So instead of putting up barriers, I really think that the churches should be more open to discussing these issues. Our cultural background, where mothers don't really, some mothers are embarrassed to speak to their children about sexual issues. So how are they going to learn? They will have to learn from the street, from their peers who may not know any better. So all those sorts of cultural issues, cultural religious issues, can cause a barrier to the information getting, the right information getting to the people we should get to.
Yes. I must say that, when I was growing up, it wasn't anything that was talked about amongst, the women in our family, aunties, parents. It wasn't something that they addressed with us. Sex education was at school, and the little we were told probably left us more confused than anything.
Exactly, that's the point. Yeah. Because there's so much hush about it. What you then pick up is half and half information.
Half and half.
It's all confusing in the end. So that's a problem. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. It was very much half information. So I was quite fortunate that we had good sort of sex education, sexual health classes, topics at school, and it came at the right time. I think if it had been left to family, it would have posed a problem for many of us, because the information, I say, was half patchy.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the women on the show or listening to the show are very much health conscious women. They're very much about, wanting to look after their bodies, wanting to make sure that what they are using as a method of contraception is safe and has minimal or no side effects, either short-term or long-term. For the health-conscious woman, what would you say is the safest or, a number of methods of contraception that would be considered to be quite safe?
Well, abstinence is very safe. But I know that's not practicable for many. But the issue of safety is relative to a woman's health, and her particular circumstances. So if we take the example of maybe a 25-year-old, very slim lady who doesn't smoke, doesn't have any health problems. So for such a lady, any contraception is safe, basically. She can use whatever she chooses to use. Whereas the same woman, the same 25-year-old woman, if she was overweight, if she had a BMI of, say, 30, and she smokes, and she has a mom who had breast cancer at an early age, for example, that completely changes the picture, you see. So what is safe for me may not be safe for the next woman, even though we're the same age, that kind of thing, because my health history is different from hers. So the issue of safety has to take into account the woman's health history, and that's why no doctor should prescribe contraception without taking a detailed history, from you. And ideally, the person asking for contraception should be open and say if she has any health problems, so that this can be taken into account. So, and I say to people, don't base your decisions on other people's experiences, because you don't know what health problems they have, that affected their use of contraception. I say to them, go and see your doctor, have a candid chat about your medical history, and together you can decide on what is safe for you, because you're an individual. You have your peculiarities, which you should base your choice on. There's this really good tool. It's called My Contraceptive Tool. It's online. It's a good one to use. Yeah. If one types it in just My Contraceptive Tool, it should come up. I think it's also on the Brooks and the Family Planning Association website. Yep. And this tool, it sort of asks you different questions. So as you answer each question, it helps you narrow down your choice from about 15 available contraceptions down to the ones that are suitable for you based on the answers you're putting into the tool, you see.
Right.
So someone could do that and then narrow down to about 4 options, and then take those 4 into your doctor, and together you can fine-tune things and decide what is safe for you. So there's no straightforward answer. I can't say this is the safest, but we do know things like condom, for example. The condom has no hormones in it, so you might regard that as very safe. But then you also have to realize you have to match the safety with its ability to protect you from pregnancy, Yeah. So even though it has no hormones, but then are you going to use it correctly? Are you going to use it consistently? So that you don't get pregnant? So those are the issues that need to be considered.
Yes, and it's also pregnancy as well as protection from
infections,
STDs as well. Yes, yeah, and also I would imagine that your use of contraception may change different stages in your life. As you said, as someone at 25 might have a different contraceptive need at the age of 40, 30, depending on her health at the time.
That's true. Yeah.
I
mean, as new health problems come up, for example, you might find that what was safe for you 5 years ago is no longer safe for you, or if your weight has changed, things like that can change, can force you to use a different method of contraception. And we know that older women, the fertility reduces as you get older. So you might find that whereas when you were younger at age 25, condoms might fail you because you're quite fertile at that age. But by the time you're 40, 45, thereabouts, you might find that condoms are fine for you, because your fertility has reduced anyway. So your needs can change over time.
Right.
And again, it's all about discussing with your doctor and seeing what is appropriate for you.
Yes. And I think it's about taking charge, isn't it? It's about women sort of taking charge of the decision and the choices that they make around their health, and particularly around their sexual well-being. And as you said, sometimes due to the different circumstances, whether it's family, whether it's cultural, we are not taught these things, and it's about sort of re-educating ourselves where necessary so that we know what choices are available to us. And know where to go for information. So I think that's really key. And I'm glad you've mentioned that website, and we could include that in the follow-up email after the show. So that would be good. That's really good. And speaking of, contraception, the morning after pill. The morning after pill. I know that there were some women that I knew, this is going back some time, that used the morning after pill as a means of contraception. So if you could just explain a little bit about the morning after pill, what is it and what does it actually do?
Okay. The morning after pill, that term, the morning after pill, is actually misleading. And I say so because sometimes we're dealing with really young girls, girls of 15, 14, thereabouts. And for such young people, it's really important to, the terminology we use has to be easy to understand and not confusing for them. Because some people feel that morning after pill implies that, okay, so you've had sex at some point, then you need to wait till the morning to take something to stop you from getting pregnant.
Right.
Whereas actually we advise people to take something as soon as possible because these things work better, the earlier you take them. So you don't have to wait till the next morning,
Okay.
Yes. So basically we're talking about emergency contraception. That's the terminology that is preferred. And when you say that, that also helps us to make the point that it's not just a pill, there are other ways. There's a coil as well that can be used as an emergency contraception. Okay, so you have pills and you have the copper coil. Both of them are types of emergency contraception. In the UK, there are two main pills. There's Levonel and Ella1. They all need to be taken as soon as possible, but certainly within 5 days of unprotected sexual intercourse. They should not be confused with what people call abortion pills because these are completely different, and the emergency contraception does not cause abortion. So it's a different pill altogether. Then you have the copper coil, that also needs to be fixed within 5 days. So ideally, if you've been at risk of pregnancy and you don't want to get pregnant, then you need to go for an emergency contraception as soon as possible. And as the name implies, it's emergency. So it's not to be used as a means of contraception. It's only in situations where there's an emergency, so to say. For example, someone has been raped. So if you've been raped and you want to make sure there's no pregnancy from the rape, then you need to use emergency contraception. Or a couple, they've had the condom break during sex, then they need emergency contraception. Or even some of our young people who have sex under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and they wake up the next day and they're like, this is what I did, Those sort of situations, it's really important to get emergency contraception.
Right.
So how they work, the pill is a hormone. Basically what it does is to stop you producing an egg. So it just says to the ovaries, no eggs because there are some sperms in the vicinity, so it just stops ovulation. And if you don't release an egg, then you can't get pregnant. So that's how it works. It also makes the linings of the womb less receptive, The copper coil, the copper in the coil is toxic to sperm and to the egg, so it just kills off the sperms and the eggs, so no pregnancy results. The copper also makes the linings of the womb less receptive. So in these ways, the emergency contraceptives help you to prevent a pregnancy. It's really important to check that you're not already pregnant before using them. Like I said, it's not the same as abortion pills. So if you're already pregnant, it's not going to help that. Yeah? Yeah,
okay. No, that's interesting because I know that, I've read somewhere that, women, particularly young girls, are using the morning after pill as a means of contraception, as, they'll have sex and then they'll have unprotected sex and then they will use the morning after pill rather than have,
proper contraception.
Chosen to be on a type or using a type of contraception. So, they knew they were going to have sex, didn't want to have protected sex, and then go to their GP or their clinic and receive the morning after pill on a regular basis. Is there anything that's in place to sort of, help women that use that method as a method of contraception? Because if they're using that without any barrier method, it's not a case of the condom has split, the condom has come off, and they're not in a monogamous relationship. They're leaving themselves open to infection as well as pregnancy. So is there anything in place to help them, really, to educate them about the risks they're running? And is there a long-term effect of using something like the morning after pill on their health directly? Does it change the uterus or the ovaries or the lining in any way if you're using that on a regular basis?
Well, it's not manufactured to work that way, So ideally, they're exposing themselves to health problems by using it that way. It's just meant for urgent situations. So. In fact, the manufacturers of one of the emergency contraceptions, the ELA-1, they've made it clear that it shouldn't be used more than once in a monthly cycle. So if you're using it, more than once, then you're using it outside the license. So you're exposing yourself to whatever problems it could cause for you. So we wouldn't encourage people to use that as their means of contraception. Ideally, it should only be used if need, like I said, in rape situations that just happened and couldn't be helped. And just to make the point that these things are really important because throughout the world, about 53 million abortions are performed each year. 53 million, and UK, for example, has very high rates of unplanned pregnancies and abortions compared to other European countries. And each abortion costs the NHS about £600, each single one. And this is money that I think could be used in, other ways. Compare that with the cost of maybe a pack of condoms, like £1 or two, So you see that it doesn't really, ideally, we should be aiming to prevent these, pregnancies rather than having to go on to have an abortion.
Yes.
So the emergency contraceptives are really important to use.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to ask about protection and STDs, and are they going down? Is the rate of sexually transmitted diseases and infections going down or going up, would you say?
Well, they are going up.
Okay.
That's what the statistics show. Yeah, the rates are going up. And unfortunately, they are quite high. The highest rates are among young people, aged 15 to 24. So the rates of STDs are going up. And for those listening, when we talk about STDs, we mainly refer to chlamydia, genital warts, genital herpes, and gonorrhea, those four. And the statistics show that they're increasing. Okay,
yeah. And has that age group always been the group that has the highest rate, or have things been different in the most, in the recent past, in the last, say, 20 years? Do you know if it's always been that particular group, the very maybe sexually active young people, are they the ones that usually have that high rate of STDs?
Well, the recent figures show that it's been highest among this, the younger people, just because they're more active, than the older people. So yes, the recent figures have shown. I'm not sure. I haven't had a look at going back 20 years or so, but in the recent past, it's been that age group.
Okay.
But we are seeing more STDs among older women.
Yes. I've heard about this trend with STDs and even HIV increasing with women who are over the age of 40 or that age group, who are becoming maybe more sexually active in I wouldn't say later life because they're still young at that age, but within that age group. Women, a lot of women are becoming sexually liberated or sexually free. But are you seeing a rise with that freedom, which is, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you are protecting yourself?
Well, yes, the numbers are increasing. And I think it's from what we've seen, it's due to a number of factors. For example, the divorce rates are higher among the older women now. So we see these women out of a relationship, maybe getting into a new relationship with a new person, and sometimes through online dating sites, which are quite popular now. So may not know their partners very well, the sexual history. So they find that they've got this new person and they're getting infections because things haven't been checked out properly. Also, some of the older women missed the sexual health education that the younger people are getting in schools now. So we have a group of older women who didn't get that sex education. So do not understand or may not be aware that these infections are still very much there. Or in their minds, they just feel it's something happening with the younger people, So we're actually seeing some infections at a more advanced stage. For example, HIV, when it's found in older people, is at a more advanced stage, just because the older women may not understand that the symptoms they are having are due to an STD, right? Or because they are menopause, they may be relating their symptoms to menopause. A lot of things are blamed on menopausal symptoms, And because they're older too, they're menopause, they're no longer worrying about pregnancy. So they sort of let down their guard, forgetting that infections are still there to worry about. And unfortunately, we contribute, the doctors, because we sort of assume that the older folks are not having sex. So we may not connect.
Where did they get that idea from?
Exactly. Or we may not connect their symptoms with an STD, or we might be too embarrassed to ask the older person about their risk-taking behavior, Or the people themselves may be embarrassed to ask the doctor to test them for an infection, especially if it's a much younger person, younger doctor, or a family doctor they've known for years, They don't want to admit what's happening in their lives. So those are reasons why the numbers are increasing. The numbers of STDs are increasing among older women, older people.
Yeah, I mean, that is a shame. But also, you hear of women and men traveling to different countries, to have a sex holiday. And they coming back with infections.
Yes.
That's quite common. You're hearing of that now, but it's I think as well, and this is one of the reasons why I asked you to be on this show, is that I think it's all about raising the awareness. It's all about removing some of this taboo that we have around sex and sexual health, and we have to take ownership, as I said before, just to even just look at what options are available for you if you are sexually active.
Active,
he said the only 100% way you can remain protected is to abstain. But once you are having, sex, intimacy, you need to be protecting yourself. You really, really do.
Yeah.
So before we open the lines, in fact, let's see if there's any callers now. Then I'll come back to you and ask you what your sort of top tips are. But I'm going to go over to the phone lines now and see if there's anyone on the line that would like to ask a question. And also I'm going to check the email to see if there are any questions that have come through since we've been on air.
Okay.
Let's have a look. So I'm going to open the lines now. Let's go over to the webcast and see if there is anybody on there with a question. So they can actually type their question in there. Okay, no questions on the webcast. Let's go to the phone lines. Right, does anybody on the call have a question? I've unmuted the lines. Good evening. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Adaeze? No? Any questions? That's fine. If you don't want to ask a question online, you can actually ask the question via email, or you can contact Dr. Adaeze afterwards directly. I will be giving out her contact details of where you can get in contact with her, and also how you can get hold of her book. So don't worry about wanting to necessarily ask a question online. That's fine. So, Dr. Adaeze, let's ask you now if you can share with us your top tips for women in regards to their sexual health.
My top tips. Right. For young people, I would say abstinence, really important. Don't have sex.
That's not going to happen.
Well, I know the message isn't for everyone, but for those who are listening, as a mother and as a doctor, that will be my counsel. It's been estimated that the average woman has about 30 years to have sex, so you have 30 years in which you can have sex morning, afternoon, night. I say to the young people, why rush into it now and start subjecting yourself to a teenage pregnancy or an STD or even the heartbreak that comes from having given your body in good faith to someone you thought loved you, but only to find that they were just trying out their skills and you're dumped for the girl next door, It's better to spend your teenage years getting sound education, acquiring skills for life, building your character, focusing on your career, your goals in life. And sex will come. Eventually, it will come. But I will urge you as a mother and a doctor to refrain from sexual intimacy until you're ready to commit to a lifetime relationship. For example, like marriage. Many emotional problems we see among our youth, things like depression, stem from negative experiences in relationships. It's alarming to know that some girls as young as 16 are already in relationships where they're experiencing domestic violence. For a 16-year-old, that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah.
So that would be my first tip.
Okay. I'm not sure if I 100% agree with you there, but I think in an environment or a situation where the young person feels very much in control and has the information and has the protection and is very much confident about themselves, as much as you can be at the age of, say, 16, 17. That is quite young still. But I also think there's a lot of taboo around sex and where sex plays in growing up and as a young person going into adulthood. They're going to experiment sexually. So I think it's about some of the things that you have said. Yes, definitely. Being mindful of who you're having sex with, being mindful of the circumstance. But I think at that age as well, there's going to be some experimentation as they're trying to find themselves. But I do, in essence, agree with what you're saying. Be mindful of how you're entering into these relationships and how your body is being used.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Well, my second tip, if I were to go on to a second one, would be I'll encourage people to be faithful to one person. That's fidelity. I know it's an old word and not much used in our society now, but this is so crucial in stemming the spread of STIs. And this goes for men as well. Let's stick to our partners. I think it's a really sad situation where one person has been faithful only to find themselves with a nasty infection just because the other person hasn't been faithful. That destroys trust in the relationship, and when trust is destroyed, it's so hard to regain. So I'll encourage people to be faithful to one person, and the third thing will be to use condoms, whether you're having vaginal, anal, or oral sex. If there's the slightest doubt about fidelity, you really need to use condoms. And if your partner won't or can't use condoms, you're a lady, I'll encourage you to use a female condom and protect yourself. We're talking about really nasty infections here, and they're preventable, but we need to use condoms. And now that reminds me, I just need to say that condoms are the only way to protect against infections, because we have some young people who, have an implant or a coil, and they feel that because they have this, they're okay. Well, the coil or the implant will protect you from pregnancy, but not from infection. Yes. So you still need to use condoms, if you're concerned about infection.
Thank you for sharing that, because that is very important. That is very, very important. You hit the nail on the head, especially when you said if you have any doubt that your partner maybe there might be some infidelity there, because we know of women who know that or have a suspicion or even know that their partner is stepping out on the relationship, but they're still having unprotected sex with their partner, and they are opening themselves up to so much infection and diseases. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because they may decide to stay in the relationship, but having unprotected sex with somebody who is having sex with somebody else really is not clever. It's not clever. Yes. Right. So, any more, Dr. Adaeze? Any more tips?
Well, and just to say to people, when we talk about sexual health, I think it has a lot to do with your attitude as well. How you feel about yourself. That's really important. Often sexual health is not really about sex, actually. It's actually about how you feel about yourself, your body, your image of you. Because if you look down on yourself, if your confidence is zero, you have no self-esteem, you often find that in that kind of state, you're vulnerable to making the wrong sexual health choices. You find yourself settling for things you normally wouldn't. So I often say to people, you need to work on yourself, build your character, build your person, love you for who you are, love yourself and expect good things for yourself, so that you don't settle for, relationships where that things are not right for you, but you settle for them just because you don't think you deserve better, So that's really an important thing to pass on to, especially the younger people. Expect better things for yourself. Don't settle for relationships where you're being misused or isn't right for you.
Excellent. And that is a current running theme through Bright Now Coaching and Bright Now Radio. That's one of the things I really do try and keep in the things that I do, is to teach women to love themselves.
Yeah.
To teach women to hold themselves in that high esteem. And we don't always do that, and we don't always have those tools as we are growing up. But as you said, it's the most important thing. It runs through everything. It runs through the relationships we're in, the way we eat, the way we look after ourselves, the way we carry ourselves. It's the common thread.
Yeah,
so I'm really
important.
I'm really glad you touched on that.
For those listening, if you would like to improve your sex life, I encourage you to go to my website, sexualwellbeingnetwork.com, and I've got a free download there on tips on optimizing your sexual intimacy. So in that article, I've outlined 6 keys that will give a massive boost to your sex life. So if you go on there and download that, I think that will help. Secondly, if you're a woman of childbearing age and you want to learn more about contraception in an easy and fun way, I encourage you to get my book, Understanding Contraception. It's a reference book on contraception, and it's available from my site, sexualwellbeingnetwork.com, or Amazon, or any good bookstores or pharmacies around you. If you're a mother of grown-up girls, the book will educate your older girls on ways to protect themselves. You can't really afford to let them learn from the streets. They've got to get the right information.
Yeah.
Also, if you're a youth or women or teenage group leader, I can be contacted for talks on a wide range of sexual health issues such as domestic violence, pornography, dating the right way, and topics like that. So just visit my speaker page on my site, Sexual Wellbeing Network, and you can see how I can help your group, what I can help your group with.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And yes, your book is also available on Kindle as well, I see.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, which is great, because a lot of us have tablets and Kindle, so it's a great thing that you can just go along and download the book within seconds. You've got
it. Yes, and start reading. Yeah.
No excuses. No excuses. So I think that's really important what you said about buying the book for the young girls in your life. So whether it's your nieces, your daughters, your little cousins, it's really important that we start sharing this and making sure that they have the right information before they need it and not have it. I've got the saying that with some things in life, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
And not have it, exactly.
And not have it, yeah. So it's really important to make sure that you get the book and pass it along. I'm going to get it for my daughter, and that will be good for her. And thank you as well for sharing how we can get in contact with you and all the things that you're doing. You're working within the community of raising the profile of sexual health and contraception, and also that free download. So I'll share that information in the email that goes out following the show. The email should go out tomorrow. And if you know anybody that wasn't listen to the live show but think that it would be something that would be of value to them, get them to go along to www.brightnowcoaching.com/radio show. Get them to subscribe by tomorrow lunchtime, and then they'll receive the call recording when it goes out tomorrow. All right, so Dr. Adaeze, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we go?
Just to say that sex is wonderful, but we just need to do it healthily, and keep ourselves protected. It's been lovely being on the show. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show this week. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you talk about such an important topic. And yes, I look forward to seeing a lot more about what you do. I'll be sending the information out on the email that follows the show. So everyone, thank you so much. Thank you for spending the last hour with us. Thank you for your time. And remember, if you look out in your inbox tomorrow, you will receive the call recordings, the show recordings, so that you can listen to it again. And also you have the details how to contact Dr. Adaeze. So I look forward to catching up with you next week at the same time. Tune in to Bright Now Radio. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The conference is now completed. Goodbye.